City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded April 1st, 2024.
But at 6:02, I will call the regular Plan Commission meeting to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Weeza.
Here.
Kneebone.
Here.
Arnson.
Here.
Beacom.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Schuler.
Here.
7-0.
And with that, we'll move on to our agenda. Item number 2 is the report, minutes and actions of the March 4th meeting of the City Plan Commission. Commissioner Cooper?
Move approval. Second.
We'll give a second to Arnson. Discussion? Comments from the audience? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Let me get to my PowerPoint here. They got me all flustered with this stuff. Screen. There. Share. And item number 3. Item number 3 is a public hearing and action on a request from Courtney Klang representing 209 Division Street LLC for a conditional use permit to operate a non-owner occupied tourist rooming house on the property located at 209 Division Street with the parcels identified in your packet. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor mentioned, the applicant is looking to occupy 2 of the rooms within the Banter apartment complex as a non-owner occupied tourist rooming house. So just to say right off the beginning, tourist rooming house is the same as a short-term rental in terms of those units would be occupied for a period less than 30 consecutive days. So a non-owner occupied tourist rooming house is when the property owner is not staying in the room in question at the time it's being used as a short-term rental. The property is zoned B4 commercial, and within the B4 commercial district, we do allow for these non-owner occupied tourist rooming homes by way of a conditional use permit. So this is really the first sort of approval that's needed. Should this commission and the council vote to grant the conditional use permit, there is still a zoning permit that's required, which would handle items such as paying local lodging taxes, getting a past health inspection through the County Department of Health, etc., which the applicant has already obtained over the last couple of days. So with that, staff would recommend approval. There are a number of conditions that's included in the packet that staff would recommend to be included.
There's what we're talking about. Before we get started on the public hearing, are there any clarifying questions from the commission? Yes, sir, Mr. Beacom.
If I recall, I think that the city provided roughly $2.2 million in incentives for this project, half of which was in cash incentives. Has this person met or satisfied the requirements for those incentives?
Yes.
Any other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay. And we will open the public hearing. During a public hearing, we're going to ask that everybody come to the lectern, state their name and address, and provide testimony. And the public hearing by law has to be, I have to announce it 3 times with nobody speaking before we move on, so we'll have a couple of those tonight. So with that, I'll declare the public hearing open on this item. Anyone wishing to offer testimony, please step forward to the lectern and provide that testimony.
Andrea Olson, 410 Franklin Street. I'm against this because this was something where the city's been going back and forth about rooming houses where they should and shouldn't be allowed. Private owners have to live in their house to be able to have a rooming house. Here, you have an apartment complex that got incentives. Why do they want to have these rooming units? Either they aren't getting enough occupancy in their apartment complex already, meaning why don't they lower the rate? Because the apartments here are $1,100 for I think about an 800 square foot apartment on up to $1,800 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. So if they're needing this because they don't have enough people in there, why not reduce the rates? The other thing is that if this is okayed for this complex, the owner also owns multiple other complexes in town, and what's going to happen next? If they get 2 here, are they going to ask at another complex to have 2? We already ran into this where over at Northside Yard, they had some of these rental units, or the tourism units also, that suddenly disappeared. This complex actually is even advertised currently on the Visitors Bureau, if you go to their website, as having these tourism units already. So maybe they had them for Century and then they just didn't get or take them away, or maybe they were busted for having these. So if the lodging tax is the reason why they should be able to have them, well, you're taking away people that are also going to a hotel instead, which would also be paying a lodging tax, or a homeowner that also has tourism housing, which would also be paying a lodging tax. So from my perspective, there's no reason to actually allow this right there, because you already have these sorts of units available in town.
Public hearing is still open. Give a little extra time because I know there's a bunch of people watching in the overflow room. Public hearing is still open. For the third and final time, the public hearing remains open. Seeing and hearing no one else wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed and bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Commissioner Cooper.
I'll move approval of the request with staff recommended conditions.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Arnson. Discussion. Go with Mr. Schuler first.
Now, this will specifically apply to units 222 and 424, is that correct? And does that need to be part of the motion?
That is correct.
So, because it's not listed as a condition, I think the commissioner brings up a good point. Do we need that as a condition to add those room numbers?
We can,
Unit numbers?
yeah, we can. It wouldn't hurt.
Okay. Commissioner? Would you like to add those as conditions?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Noted. Commissioner Beacom?
Because this is zoned as such, if we chose to deny it, would that carry any weight?
Defer to staff.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, Commissioner. A number of years ago, the state of Wisconsin, and I know this body has discussed this quite extensively, really limited the ability for plan commissions and common councils to deny conditional use permits. If you want to deny a conditional use permit, there has to be objective reasoning to do so. You can't subjectively say, we would allow this or we would not allow this. There has to be objective reason to do so. And that's why you have the 8 standards of the conditional use permit within each staff packet. So although you could recommend denial, if you have reason to do so, make sure that's included as part of your motion to go to the common council, because they'll ultimately have to make that determination.
And the city attorney, I believe, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I believe he would advise to specifically address which of the conditions of review you feel it does not meet, and why, if that makes sense.
I think for me, my challenge with this is that the city has looked at housing. We know that we need more single-unit and 2-family unit or 2-unit homes. We've incentivized this complex, and now we're incentivizing a tourist rooming home with public tax dollars. That's a challenge, and as the person just pointed out, Northside Yards has 30 furnished units. I think any of these complexes moving forward will make that play. So whether we're setting precedent or that's just what we should expect moving forward, to do that with public tax dollars is a tough one to swallow.
I tend to agree. Commissioner, Alderperson Kneebone, Commissioner Person.
Going along with those lines, could you make a no more than a certain percentage of the unit? So you would look at, if somebody from a larger complex came in, they could only have X percent. So they couldn't use 50 apartments, they could only use maybe 3. So that would limit proliferation of trying to turn them into Airbnbs or short-term rentals. I don't know, would that be That might be a city attorney question.
Well, but in this case, we're only talking about this particular instance, these particular rooms. Correct. If we want to talk about policy going forward, we could certainly add that to another
that might-
agenda, but like
That would be-
a
you're right.
policy encompassing tourist rooming houses in any aspect would require a separate agenda item,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You would have to do some type of restrictive covenant between the city and the developer for that specific unit. Again, this is just for the Division Street property. I think the condition that it's only the 2 units is probably sufficient. If they came in and said we wanted to do half the units as tourist rooming houses, I think staff would have a concern with that, but because it's 2 of the 79 total units, or 72 total units, I think that's why staff is recommending approval as presented with the conditions outlined.
Any other thoughts? Any additional comments from the audience? Or anyone in the overflow room? If anyone online has something, you will have to either get into the chat or raise your virtual hand. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on that. Yes, sir.
I guess I just had the question about what's the difference between apartments with tourist rooming and a hotel? Where is that fine line? Is it a fine line? Is it defined?
Excuse me.
Does it matter, is another question.
If it's primary use as a hotel, there are additional licensings that have to go along with it. Like think about the recently or soon-to-be open hotel in the business park. There's a process that they have to go through the county for licensing. The process for tourist rooming houses is still required through the county, but the restrictions are much less stringent because the primary use of that building is not hotel or tourist rooming house. The whole idea with like Airbnbs and VRBOs originally were for single units, maybe one side of a duplex to be used for short-term rental. The city does collect room tax as part of that. That's remitted through the Airbnb or VRBO platform. And so there's some regulatory differences, but overall Airbnbs are typically considered less regulated than like a hotel.
Well, if I could just follow up on that, sorry, but it seems like there may be some merit in defining, is it half, is it 3/4, how much of such an establishment would need to go, would need to remain as, rental units.
And if they wanted to increase the number of units that would become tourist rooming house, it would have to become before this body anyway. And that's at the point where I think you folks could establish, if they have 50% plus one as a tourist rooming house, I think you would have a reason to deny that conditional use permit.
Mr. Schuler.
I think piggybacking on Ms. Kneebone and Mr. Beacom, for future discussion, I think that this option for tourists is probably part of an economic development strategy. And the discussion would be, how advantageous is it to have more units like this? What do we really need? I think we sort of got into that a little bit with the golf tournament at Century, opening it up that we did and pulling it back. So I think part of the future discussion would be, is this something that the city really wants to advocate for in some fashion? And then it gets into the what percent is too much in a given circumstance, that type of a thing. So.
Yeah, and I would just add, there is some state law that limits how municipalities can regulate tourist rooming houses, and we've been pretty cognizant when putting together a tourist rooming house ordinance that we're within the spirit of that law. So city staff can definitely do a little bit of background and provide some type of report to the body at a future date if that's something of interest.
Yeah, I think it'd be a better policy discussion than just an ordinance answer, so thanks.
Any other comments? Questions? I'm going to throw in my 2 cents here. The city incentivizes residential development because it fills a need for the city. If we didn't need housing units desperately, we would have no reason to incentivize them. Part of that incentive is ensuring that the city gets what it needs, right? The taxpayers are investing in it, and the taxpayers should get something in return. in a case like this where an apartment building is not renting the apartments and they want to use short-term rentals, well, now you're pretty directly competing with some of the hotels and some of the other short-term rental units that are single-family homes in most cases. I think rather than considering approving or denying this today, I think we postpone it until we can have a more broad discussion about what exactly we expect when there are taxpayer dollars involved in any type of development, residential being the primary one that we're talking about today. So I would be supportive of not approving this this motion and rather postponing it and putting something on the next agenda to start that discussion about a policy relating to city used or TID incentives, specifically with residential units.
You do have a motion on the floor currently.
We do. I was just wondering if you're going to respond to anything. Okay, the motion is, anybody else? Sorry, Mr. Rice.
Maybe just
Go
a
ahead.
question related to that. Licensure of the tourist rooming houses, is that like an annual renewal that would have to go through the city, or is it a time limit on that?
Yeah, conditional use permits are perpetual until such time that the use is no longer being used. But the licensing has to be done, I believe it's annually, and that's inspected through Portage County's Health and Human Services Department.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So I'd be inclined to withdraw my second. I think I seconded it.
That's
And
correct.
because the alternative would be we'd vote on it and then either yes or no, but we don't want to do that. We want to push it back until we can look at this again. Correct?
That one gets a little trickier. I'm going to bring the city attorney up here.
So, putting that question aside for the moment, one thing to note here is we can't receive an application for a conditional use permit, put it on the shelf, change our policies, and then review that application through the lens of the new policies. You have to administer that application under the policies that are in place at the time that it's received. So I would encourage you to make decisions with that principle in mind.
Okay.
I think, though, that if I might, is this relatively precedent-setting? Is this the first time we've had this situation before us?
No, the Northside Yard project came before this body maybe 2 years ago, and then Blue Top at one point, I think, was interested in pursuing this
That's
as
what it
well.
was, right. And, right, just kind of short, my impression was a more short-term apartment type
Correct.
thing than a tourist rooming.
Correct. And I think it's important to note, too, really how we have to regulate and how the state says we have to regulate tourist rooming houses is anything less than 30-day stays under the tourist rooming house, anything more than a 30-day stay does not fall under the tourist rooming house. So if they're renting to, let's say, a traveling nurse as an example, that does not fall under the tourist rooming house definition if they're there for more than 1 month. But if you're there for 2 weeks visiting family or in town for a golf tournament, that does fall under the tourist rooming house regulations.
All right, good. No, I was kind of wondering about that. What is that
Yeah.
timeline?
The other option you have is to put a review on it, 6 months or a year. We've done that with other conditional uses.
Correct.
Just, to see if it is indeed detrimental, if this, the thought is that this will somehow adversely affect or in some cases affect one of those standards of review. You don't know for sure. You can always put a review on it for a year, I think has been typical.
Is it on me? I guess no. I'll keep it there.
Because you had said you were going to withdraw your second, which technically by Robert's rules isn't allowed, but
Okay,
we've
yeah,
had
no.
a practice of doing that.
I think we'll leave it out there.
If you're going to
I'll
leave it
the
as
second
that,
there.
then I'm going to make an amendment that this conditional use be set for review in 1 year.
A second.
Seconded by Rice on the amendment. Now, discussion only on the amendment. Thoughts?
is there precedent there? So, is there an issue with past ones that have been approved without that amendment?
We have had instances in the past where we've had homes that were approved for tourist rooming house, and we had a number of police activities at that property, and we did end up revoking a conditional use permit for that specific one. Historically, when we've added the 12-month condition, it's been administratively reviewed, and if city staff feels the need to bring it back before this body, we would. Things that would trigger something like that are, constant police calls, any fire EMS calls, any neighboring nuisances. Those are things that would really compel staff to bring it back in front of this body for consideration after the 12th month.
And to Attorney Beveridge's point, so we vote on this today, can we review the policy for future applications? Okay.
Yeah, but that wouldn't change, that wouldn't be retroactive.
Correct.
Yeah,
And if you wanted to add that staff is to review it after the year, I'm certainly okay with that.
And I would say that, this body's scope and development agreement creation is pretty limited, right? I mean, you're in charge of zoning and reviewing applications as they come in, but, a recommendation to the council from this body isn't the worst thing in the world as it relates to, how the city utilizes public funds to incentivize private development.
Yes, sir.
I assume that if we do take a vote on this, your idea for having the subsequent discussion in next month or the month after is still appropriate, right?
We're going to have Adam make a note on that right now.
Okay, good.
So, any other comments about the amendment?
No.
Just the amendment, because we have to vote on that. Okay, so the amendment is for the conditional use to be reviewed by staff after 1 year. Okay, if you're in favor, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we go back to the original motion as amended, and that motion is to approve with staff recommended conditions and a review by staff after 1 year. Any discussion on that?
Subject to 222 and 424.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry, forgot about those. Alderman Ebon? I see the gears moving.
Well, I'm thinking if it's just a couple rooms, there's a little bit of competition with the hotels, but not a whole lot. And if somebody's traveling, they might appreciate perhaps a lower cost option than a hotel room. I mean, I'm planning a trip out west to go to a memorial service for a relative. So I've been looking at, I'm really aware of Airbnb prices and hotel prices, and wouldn't mind an overnight in something a little less than a $250 hotel room. So, I mean, I can see, I don't think that competition should be a big issue, because it just gives people another, one extra choice. Option if they come here. So, but generally speaking, I support the conditions. So.
Okay, back to the original motion as amended. If you are, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 3. Where am I? 4, item number 4, that's what I said. I said 4, I totally said 4. Is a public hearing and action on a request from Wayne Bushman, representing Sunrise Point Ventures LLC for a conditional use permit to construct self-service storage buildings on the property located at 5001 Stearns Drive with the parcels identified in your packet. Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. So this request is an extension of a similar request that was brought before you all late last year, December, I believe. So as the mayor mentioned, the applicant is looking to construct a few self-service storage buildings. These would be buildings that would be available for rent, for storing goods, materials, etc., and would not be affiliated with any of the other uses on the property. Gamber Johnson, for example, the incubator structures, for example. Since there's been a number of requests that's been brought before this body over the last 2 years or so, I wanted to provide updated site plans showing all of the structures that are either already approved or that is proposed before you all tonight. So you see full snapshot of the property, Coy Drive on the south side of the image, Krems Avenue is on the east side. So we have the approved incubator structures that were approved by the council in November of 2022. We have the approved storage buildings that were reviewed by this body back in December. Those will be located just north of the Ameta Center. And then we have the 3 self-service storage buildings under consideration tonight that's situated just to the north of that, between those approved storage buildings and Gamber Johnson. So staff within our various departments have reviewed the proposed submittal, and we do have a few conditions that's been placed in the packet and shown on the next slide. Pretty standard conditions that were applied for the past projects, as well as focusing more on stormwater, on parking, on drive access, et cetera. So staff would recommend approval and happy to take any questions.
Okay, before I open that public hearing, are there any clarifying questions for the commission? Commissioner Rice?
Yeah, maybe if you can provide any insight. I believe those initial storage buildings were fairly large and kind of intended as commercial storage to be used potentially by other businesses. These look maybe smaller, more traditionally sized, like residential overflow storage. Is that accurate, or is there any other kind of intent that the applicant provided?
Yeah, so the units are going to be slightly smaller than the buildings that were approved, and the intention would be for any resident to lease a space out to.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request, step to the lectern. Public hearing remains open. Again, allowing extra time in case anybody from the overflow room is coming. For the third and final time, the public hearing remains open. Seeing and hearing none, I'll bring it back, close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Commissioner Arnson.
I'd move to approve per staff recommendations.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second by Beacom. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. And now, you ladies and gentlemen, your main event. Item number 5. Public hearing and subsequent action on a request from the City of Stevens Point for a preliminary subdivision plat review of a planned subdivision on the property located at 5498 Gala Road, with parcel identified in your packet, consistent of Chapter 20.05 Sub 1. Director Konoski?
Thank you, Mayor. So before you this evening is a preliminary subdivision plat review. Our local subdivision ordinance requires 2 reviews by this body, a preliminary review and a final review. The preliminary review is before you, and this is the opportunity for the Plan Commission to recommend changes as part of the development of the subdivision itself. I think it's a really important piece that this is we will take the public feedback and the direction from this body, present that to the council, and then with their approval, we'll go back and make some adjustments as needed. So really, this goes back about 3 years, 2 or 3 years now. Originally, a private developer had acquired the site and was looking at doing large lot development. The city has what's known as extraterritorial review authority, and that means that anything outside the city's corporate limits allows us to approve or deny those types of subdivisions. In this case, a large lot subdivision within wellhead protection zones causes additional well and septic systems, and that's something we do not want as part of our municipal well and our municipal wellhead protections. So then there was a proposal by the same developer to do a 39-lot subdivision that had gone through the approval process and actually had gone through the, I believe, final approval in 2022 or 2021. Ultimately, the numbers didn't pencil out for that developer, and he ended up abandoning this specific project. The city opted to, because of continued need for housing in the community, acquire the parcel and do a higher density development composed of single family and proposed 0 lot lines. And so city staff in the engineering department, city planning department have been working over the last several months to put together a subdivision plan that would, we believe, meet some of the requirements and directions of the council previously. That being that when we put public infrastructure in single and 2-family subdivision development, that those subdivisions are dense enough to justify long-term financial liabilities that the city may have, i.e. roads have to be replaced, sanitary and sewer lines have to be replaced. There is a larger cost to maintain that, and having a low-density, single-family subdivision does not, it puts an undue burden on the city's finances over the lifetime of those specific utilities. And so we had looked at a number of different options. The city had a public information meeting in February. Concurrently with the plat that's before you, we've also gone out and gotten some bids for doing the work itself. As part of the road construction project, we had a public information meeting in February, as I mentioned, and took a lot of informal feedback from the neighborhood in that. Originally, the city had proposed, I believe, 82 lot subdivision. There was a lot of concern about zero lot lines that were along Gala Road. We removed the zero lot lines, replaced those with single-family homes along Gala Road. That's reduced the total number of units from 82 to 72. We have proposed a sidewalk extending from Burlowski to Duncan Drive on the north side of Gala Road. As I had mentioned, a number of the informal feedback we had gotten is there's an area that's common for walkers, and so wanting to ensure that there was some pedestrian accommodations within that area made the most sense to us, so that's included as part of the bid itself. We also extended the Joe Street right-of-way to the north lot line. That does not mean that the city will extend the street to the Lost Creek or the drainage ditch that's along the north lot line. It just means that the right-of-way is there so that in the event that future development occurs on the north side of this property, that there is road right-of-way, and if the developer or the city would choose to do some type of connectivity there for road infrastructure, we have the ability to do so. That also allows for the drainage easement that exists, those folks to have access to that drainage ditch without having to go in off of either Maple Bluff or Burlowski Road. So we did work with some folks who are part of the drainage district easement, or the drainage easement. It's not really a district from my understanding. And thought what makes the most sense here for you folks to access to clean out that drainage ditch, being cognizant that this area does service a number of acreage east of City of Stevens Point. And that's where we came up with the 20-foot easement along the top of the slope of Lost Creek. In your packet, you did receive, or not in your packet, but late Friday, we did receive a letter from the attorney for Nick and Diane Summers, who are part of that drainage easement. He has proposed a outlot. I think that's a totally reasonable thing, and that's something that we have discussed previously with the Summers. And so that might be a recommendation of this body, is to pursue the outlot option as opposed to an easement option. I would recommend that we at least seriously consider that, because it places the burden on the Summers then as part of their outlot ownership, and not necessarily the property owners that would be adjacent to the area. So more than happy to answer any of the questions you folks might have. This does meet, I think, some density requirements that the city's been looking for. It ends up being about 2.7 lots, units per acre, pretty similar to the area on the east side of Burlowski in the Kingfisher area, where we have a mix of single and zero lot line or two-family development there, and then similarly dense as the area directly northeast of the proposed subdivision. I believe it's Georgella is up there. There's some higher density Town Hall residence subdivision that's up there that's similar in terms of density, but this one would be definitely a little bit more dense than that.
I'm just going to add a few things as well. Just for clarification again, Director Karnowski, that drainage ditch is critical to other parts of the county, and we have secured all of the necessary rights to maintain that, or have that district maintained in perpetuity, whether it's through the outlot or through the easements. Is that correct?
There's a proposed 20-foot easement along the top of the slope that's back there, if you ever had the chance to walk it. Nothing formalized with the Summers, but it's definitely something city staff is more than happy to work with them on.
Okay. And I need to point out, too, we did get a emailed comment from Nick and Diane Summers and Stacy Anderson. Those will both be available in the public record as part of this public testimony and public hearing. The one reason that we're looking at smaller lots is our biggest concern has been housing affordability. with the cost of utilities borne on the property owner, smaller lots make those options more affordable for home ownership. If you have a large lot and there's a $15,000 encumberment on it because of utilities, that makes it a little harder to purchase that lot and build a home. Density generates the most use out of there and also makes it the most affordable. That's one of the reasons that we're looking at smaller lot sizes in this area. This is, again, preliminary, so we're still taking feedback, and we will have that feedback via the public hearing. I want to remind everybody that there are over 100 people here today. Please be cognizant of everybody's time and be courteous. If you're repeating things, if you agree with the previous speaker, just feel free to state that, or if somebody else has already covered your argument, of course, you can choose not to speak. But we want to be recognizing the courtesy and be cognizant of everybody's time here today. So with that, especially those people in the overflow room, if you know you're going to speak, maybe step up into the hallway and we can save a little time that way too. So I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony, step to the lectern, name and address. We won't do a roll call, just we're all grown adults, get into a queue.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Zarowski, 1515 Country Club Drive, Stevens Point, Wisconsin, 54481. We are objecting to this meeting today for failure of proper notice to the trustees of the adjacent land to the projected subdivision at Gala Road. I am one of the 4 trustees that owns the 46 acres on Brusky, parcel number 0202 40826-04, and parcel number 0202-40826-01.02. We are not waiving our objection for an opportunity to speak. Is this project part of a FERC project because it is a tributary of the Wisconsin River? Has there been an archaeological assessment done on the property? Has there been an environmental assessment or environmental impact statement on this property? Is the Lost Creek a navigable waterway? What is the exact number of wetlands impacted? Where is the mitigation? Do you have DNR permits and Army Corps of Engineer permits? There may be Native American artifacts. We may have to contact the Historical Society. There are protected insects and amphibians living in the Lost Creek. Point of Beginning Surveyors has found a Harrison monument on one of the corners of our property, which could be up to 300 years old. In coordination with the LWRM, Land Water Resource Management, federal and state grants from the 10-year plan were drafted in 2019 and approved in 2020. Failure to comply with these guidelines will result in returning the funds that Portage County has received. We are objecting to this proposal to be approved by this committee today and request you vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mike Splinter, 1475 Torn Road in the town of Hull. I am a county board supervisor for District 12, and this is the one district that is affected most by this new subdivision. My constituents that would be next to this high-density subdivision that is being planned for feel it would dramatically affect the character of their neighborhoods with increased traffic and devalued homes if this high-density subdivision goes bad and turns into a slum area down the road. If you feel you need to experiment with a high-density subdivision with so-called affordable housing, why not experiment on the 30-some acres that you tried to sell to the county for a jail? It's out by itself, nobody's around it, and then if people want to move into it after it's built, they know all about it. There's nobody out there. That would make the most sense if you're trying to experiment. I've been on the Planning and Zoning Committee for the county for the last 6 years, and worked with Mr. Schuler. And there's one saying that goes through my head with every request that comes through on the Planning and Zoning, and I hope you can take it to heart. Don't do unto others anything that you would not want done unto you. Think about it. You're a city doing something onto another party, another district, not even in the city. If this was being done to a city, you'd have a whole room full of city people complaining that you're putting a high-density subdivision next to them. So think about that before you make your vote. Thank you for the time to speak. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nick Summers, 292 Maple Bluff Road, Stevens Point. I'd like to speak about the drainage ditch. I call it the Gullah property because that's what it was for many, many, many years, and it's now the Stevens Point property. In 1940, 4 property owners for $1 granted the right to construct, enlarge, repair, rebuild, perpetually, and maintain a drainage ditch recorded May 7, 1940. And it's still in existence because we had, in 2021, reestablished it for a year and nobody complained. So it's still in place. This drainage system goes all the way to Highway J and to Cattle Moraine, up to Ellis, Wisconsin, and the Jordan Swamp. It drains thousands of acres of farmland, very valuable farmland, irrigated. And if that ditch ever gets plugged and crops are there, and you want to go to the bank and get a loan, and he finds out that you can't, there's no drainage, we're screwed. That's why this is so very, very important. Thousands of acres, and this drainage ditch also goes through Sturgella subdivision and Eastwood subdivision. And they've had many, many floodings, basements flooded, and the town of Hull has put drain into the ditch on people's backyards to relieve the flooding. And they did it on both sides. And when Eastwood was built, 2 outlets were left along the drainage ditch that connect the whole network of our farm ditches that we maintain and clean and pay for our own properties and pay for the main ditch a percentage. So this is environmentally sensitive. It's financially probably costs millions of dollars when we start flooding homes, and the city wants to go and puts homes, and you talked about having a meeting, but you never said that we would own the lots. 15 homes would be along this ditch. They could put stuff in it, plug it up. That can't happen. We need to have an outlet. Also, the town of Hull has, when Maple Bluff subdivision was built, they gave, Otterson's gave town of Hull 2 easements on the back side of this drainage ditch, and also a easement for a culvert into the Plover River. And nobody talks about another culvert 100 feet further south that drains a whole section of the Gullah, Stevens Point now subdivision, that water comes through and goes with a big culvert as big as the one that runs this whole ditch, and nobody's talking about it. It can probably affect 4 to 8 lots, and nobody's walked it and said anything about it. They can't be filled, and nobody says anything about it. And I hear somebody, and I'm going to get into the environmental impact and all that kind of stuff. So you have a letter. This is very, very important for the whole community and the whole side of Stevens Point. I grew up in Stevens Point, and I know the situation here. You can't, this is the only ditch all the way from Jordan Swamp on Highway 66 to Highway 10, that all this water through all this hole has to flow through, and it can't be. We have the legal easements to go upon this land and clean with equipment, not to, we probably, if you want to have homes, the easement shows we'll probably go through the yard, because we'll take it to court, and we have the letter that shows that we are ready to do that, because we have to. This is way too important for the community and environment and financially to go through. And we hope you see the situation and vote no. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
No, that's actually a good point. During a public hearing, it's just a hearing. We don't do question and answers. We will have time for that in the action portion of the item, but none right now.
This is a public hearing, and how come it's surveyed and there's roads already and trees cut? How come the city let that happen?
Public hearing is still open.
Mayor and Plan Commission, thank you. And I said, and what everybody said up to now, I agree with, and I disagree with this plan. We sat in this room, and I stood at the same lectern when Mr. Anderson presented his proposal, and we thought this was too dense for this area, and you assured me that it really was not. It was part of what we see in the surrounding area. But now, I'm Jim DeWeerd. I'm at 5364 Duncan Drive, which is just off of Maple Bluff Road. And I'm a member of this community, the member of this neighborhood. And I see our neighborhood as everything east of Brulowski, south of Regent, Duncan Drive, and Maple Bluff Road, particularly on the north side. And what we see now is a proposal for 87, 82, how many homes in the new proposal?
72.
Yeah, and I thought 33 was too many. Now we're going 7. You've more than doubled the number of homes there. And I will tell you that this room is full and the next room is full because our neighborhood doesn't want it. And if the city has to spend $2 million to provide water and sewer, isn't there a better place to take this adventure of low-cost housing and high-density housing someplace else in the community, in the city, that we can maybe make it less onerous on the new landowners and have less cost for water and sewer than to spend $2 million and go right through everybody's property to make this project happen? Maybe there's a better choice than putting it here, because to me it looks like you're putting a ghetto in the middle of a nice neighborhood of modest homes, reasonably sized properties, some big homes to the west, some smaller homes to the east. But when you tell me that you're going to put a 1/10 acre lot on here and put homes on it, it just doesn't fit the neighborhood. It doesn't blend well into what we live in, and our neighbors really object to this whole process. Number two is that there's a road on the new proposal that goes out the northwest side. Well, you already have 4 entrances and exits to this property, and that road going out there every night goes right directly at the A-frame, and they will have light shining through their house every night that people drive through there. It'll put more traffic on Maple Bluff Road. The city has taken a chunk of our tax ability. Now owns the property. You'll get the taxes. We don't. And so we still have to pay for road maintenance when city residents drive those roads. Some will, some won't, but it will increase our traffic on township roads. So I hate to see representation without taxation, but that's the way it is. You people are making a decision that affect me, and I can't vote, and I can't say what you guys are doing. You know, I understand the need for new housing, and let's go ahead and build it, but build it somewhere where it doesn't cost so gosh darn much money to get sewer and water to it. So that's my thought.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Benjamin Witucky, 5485 Gala Road, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I just moved here in last July with my wife and 1-year-old son. This is obviously my first time speaking anything like this, so I really appreciate the audience. Me and my wife moved from La Crosse. We sold our first home, and we really wanted to choose carefully moving to Stevens Point. We wanted to find a forever home, somewhere we wanted to live for 30-plus years. We did buy the house that's touching some of these proposed lots. I'll just say, I chose this neighborhood for a reason. I don't sit here saying, how dare you think about building houses here, but me and my wife put a lot on the line to buy a very nice house, and we're very concerned about what this will do to our neighborhood, both in our property value and just the neighborhood feel. We chose this because we felt like as young people, this is a place we could live forever. Some of my big concerns are specifically the zero lot line homes, and I don't have statistics on it, but it gives an impression and a feel of a neighborhood that a lot of people don't want, and we don't want that. You know, we want to live in a neighborhood with families that want to be there for 20, 30 years, not buy a house and move in 2 or 3 years. We want big yards with hopefully our son to play with his friends. So, you know, I don't want to sit here and say I know everything about developing a town, but, you know, it seems to us like we're really going to be the kind of getting the short end here. We're right next door. You talk about building sidewalks. I currently have the only driveway on Gala in this strip. I wish to God my driveway was not on Gala, because it's dangerous. I have a little boy. People do not drive carefully on this road. They drive too fast. They blow the stop sign in front of my house 30 times a day. UPS guys, FedEx guys, the mailman, I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble, but he blows my stop sign every day, and I'm not knocking him. He's a busy guy. But I'm really concerned about the safety. You say the sidewalks, well, that sidewalk's going to go in my front yard, and a new lot's going to go right next to my house. So I'm giving up part of the feel of my front yard, which is beautifully landscaped, why I chose to buy my home. And so that's one concern I have, is just the safety of Gala. We constantly, purposely don't walk on it because we're worried about my wife getting hit with a stroller. So it's really important to me. I also just want to say, we picked Stevens Point because my wife's from Stevens Point, and we hear great things about how much Stevens Point cares about the environment, and there's no green space in this area, nothing set aside for parks. I brought that up to a few people, and they keep saying, well, Bannock School is very close to your house. And I just want to remind everyone, Bannock School is not a public playground. Our child's not in school, and rightfully so. We can't go there during the day. If I showed up, I don't think it's not the teacher's responsibility to say, hey, you can play here, you live in this neighborhood, right? It's a closed playground for all of the school year and for summer school when that's in session. So it's not a place that my wife can take our son to play on a playground. There is a park about a mile away across Burlesky that has a small playground and a little walking path, but I would love to see, if this development continues, some sort of contribution to the green space from this group. It doesn't need to be a grand Taj Mahal park, but some commitment to adding to the green space for families in this area would go a long way for the feel of these people, and for us personally. You know, it'll be 4 years till I can send my son to the Bannock playground with his teachers. We have some more children. It could be 7, 8 years. So being able to say, well, your kids can go play at Bannock, that's not really the case, and I think it's really important to remember. So I just want to say thanks again for hearing us. I agree with everything people have said about mostly the lot size, and if this is the right spot. Again, I understand you guys want to build more houses, but I think they should fit the feel of the area.
Thank you, and thank you for having the courage to come here and speak. It's not easy, I know.
No, I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. It's also noteworthy how important parkland is.
Hello, I'm Monica Heisman. My maiden name is Zarowski. Last year in October, our father passed away, and I became an owner in Portage County, town of Hull, of a 46-plus acre lot. That is right there. I'm here to talk to you about 3 issues that I think are vitally important. One is Lost Creek. It's my understanding that there will be culverted Lost Creek and filled over to have the lots go and continue. If you go to the page before, which shows the water line, please, if you could do that.
This
one? That one, yes, please. So that whole creek, Lost Creek, will be, I believe, a culvert we put in and covered, and it won't be. You're going to do maintenance. Well, just more history about Lost Creek. Lost Creek is from the Lost Creek Wetlands, which starts in Stockton. It comes through Burlesky Road, and it hits our property 3 times. We were told that we have to stay 50 feet from that creek when we were logging to pay for the taxes for this year on that 46-plus property. Lost Creek is also a Class 1 trout waterway. It also is under the FERC guidelines, which is the tributaries that go into the Wisconsin River. This is an important waterway. We really don't want to lose it or lose our ability to have the wildlife that I saw yesterday when I was walking and fell and hit my head. The birds and the deer that utilize this waterway. One thing to note with this plan is Lost Creek comes onto the Zarowski property 3 times. And we have followed the guides and regulations and rules and the easement to Lost Lake. I wanted to give a very brief history on how I found out about this meeting. Our grandparents, we are 4th and 5th generation people that live in Portage County. Our grandparents bought a 40-acre lot on Country Club Drive through eminent domain in 1970. They took away 29 acres to allow for the 1051, as we called it, interchange. Right now, they're putting in a proposal that is going to be for a walk and bike path, which will stop right before the curve and doesn't go to Highway 10. In researching that, I found out about this meeting. Someone in 1950 from the town of Hull did a dedicated partway on our property again. My concerns were, here we are, same thing. We want to have the city advance. We want to have whatever advancements you have, but our family has gone through a lot of property loss due to advancement, and I'd like the creek to stay as it is and not to be altered in any way. The last thing I want to talk about is the 72 counties of Wisconsin all participated in a 10-year plan with it's the land water resource management. This committee and the committees of Portage County drafted that on December 17th, 2019. It went to the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. In 2020, it was approved. Anything within those guidelines that are not being properly maintained, looked at, habitat, waterways, and renewal, any grant monies will have to be returned due to forfeiting of that if they're not following the guidelines. And so part of what we are concerned about is there are a lot of permits, there are a lot of waterway issues that we don't have information about. I found out about this again yesterday. I've had 24 hours to try to prepare something to share with you all on why I think it's important that we pause, stop, get the permits, see if the Army Corps of Engineers, we called the DNR today. We're waiting on their response to see what permits are there. So I thank you for your time. We would like you all to vote no and to give us the opportunity to do the research and to have the Historical Society be called and have the geological study. I know, I'm sorry I'm taking your time up. Mill Creek, very close to us, has the oldest rocks in Wisconsin. They're 1.9 billion years old. We're from a rock flow that through time has degraded down. We have no idea if there's any geological features on our land. We just haven't had the time to prepare. So I thank you for your time, and I want you all to vote no, please.
Thank you very much.
I'm Audrey Roberts. I live on 511 Leonard Street. I oppose this subdivision because the lots are too small. Are you guys, if you do go through with this, are you planning the same size lots between Gullah Road and Regent Street? If so, how many and when? I would oppose such a layout in this area. Will this project lead to a forced annexation of my neighborhood? I do not want to be forced out of my home by annexation to the city. I just saw the previous subdivision plat, and it's beautiful with the 39 lots. It looks pretty and perfect. So I'm not sure if it's too late to go back to this. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Jim, before you go, I know there was some big concern there. I want to assure you that we cannot force annexation. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Jim?
So I just want to correct a couple of things that Ryan said. I think you said there were 39 lots, and that was for the entire subdivision, but the subdivision north of Gala was only 33 lots. So the plan that you're proposing is more than doubling that, and that's really inappropriate for this neighborhood. And I think you said that it was maybe close to the surrounding neighborhoods, but my quick research shows that the lots south of Regent go from over an acre down to as small as 1/2 acre. The lots east of Brolowski are 3/4 of an acre and larger. So this is just totally different than that. The lots in the Kingfisher Sandpiper area vary from 3/4 of an acre. There's some 1/2 acre lots, and there's some very few 1/4 acre lots. So again, this density is not at all close to what the existing neighborhood is. Jim had mentioned that it's going to cost a couple $1 million to get that infrastructure in there. It's way more than that. It's going to be way more than that. It's going to be at least $2 million just for what's on that property. Probably more than that. Ryan can correct me, but when I was doing some research on this, my penciling, based upon the numbers that had been given to me by Ryan, who had got them from Joel, is that the trade-off between more infrastructure and therefore more lots, cheaper lots, is about the same as less infrastructure and more lots that are more expensive. So dollars and cents wise, it's pretty much a push. Now, I don't disagree that the city ought to consider affordable housing. I'm not sure this is the place to do it. And has the city ever considered housing for upscale? If someone's coming to Stevens Point, maybe they're already in Stevens Point, they want to build a larger home, have a larger lot, and a nice neighborhood. Well, right now, they're not going to do that in the city of Stevens Point. The city of Stevens Point has an opportunity to provide that here if they want to do so. And someone else said, do the smaller lots, maybe out in the 30 acres, wherever that is. Now, we could say that, well, families don't need 1/2 acre or 1 acre lots. They can build a house on a 1/4 acre lot. Well, that's fine. We could all agree that that's the case. But we're not making that decision for those folks. Those folks that want that larger house are going to make that decision for themselves. And if they don't have it in Stevens Point, we're going to watch them go someplace else, and we're going to miss out on that. Ryan pointed out to me, well, you know, they could buy 2 or 3 lots and build that house. And that's true, but are they going to want to do that in a neighborhood of very small homes? I don't think so. That's all I have.
Thanks, Jim. Public hearing is still open. If you want to buy it back, talk to Ryan.
So my name is Brody Rice. I live at 111 Maple Bluff Road. It's up here. I also own a commercial property downtown Stevens Point, and I'd just like to speak briefly about safety.
You want the other one up?
Pardon?
Which one would you like up?
This one's fine.
All right.
So the existing neighborhood, I don't think was really designed with walking in mind, but we still kind of do it anyways. I know our road, Maple Bluff, is twisty. There's trees that come right out to the road. We all still walk, but we kind of take our safety in hand doing that. And so, a lot of us do walk, but with this development here and the added ones coming on, there's going to be a lot more people walking, and I just don't think it's going to be safe to have many, many more people walking on the roads that already are kind of unsafe. In fact, my wife and I were walking just a couple of weeks ago, and we almost got hit by a car. So safety is my main concern. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Hi, Dan Johnson, 5772 Regent Street, Stevens Point. I guess I want you to picture a Venn diagram. 3 overlapping circles. One of them's affordability, one's chaos, and one's investment. And I think we all know the chaos part of this on Highway 10 and the east side. I mean, they looked at putting a bypass in how long ago and for how long, and how many dollars were spent on that, and then that was shelved. Well, the traffic hasn't gotten any better. And the DOT really screwed it up. Mayor Wiesa, you agree? With the whole exit off of Highway 10 on the east side onto 39 in the summer when everybody's headed up north and school's out, traffic is just ridiculous. I mean, so this is going to add to that. That's one circle. Affordability is the other circle. I checked with a couple of builders before I came here, said on average, it's $200 a square foot to build a new home. On a 2,000 square foot home, that's $400,000. To afford $400,000, I did the research, you need a combined income of about $106,000 with 20% down. That's what a bank's going to want. $106,000 for a 2,000 square foot home. I'm guessing most of the homes would be over 2,000 square foot minus the zero lot line homes, which make 0 cents. The last part of this is investment. Mayor Wiesa, you suggested that you've determined, or somebody has determined, there's taxpayer needs for this. Well, I'll take the Kevin O'Leary approach. Every one of his dollars that he sends out as an investor, as you mentioned, taxpayers are the investors here. They want to see a return on their investment. Typically, that means money in their pocket. I'm guessing that the taxpayer is not going to get anything out of this. The city is, but the taxpayer's not. So there's no return on investment for the taxpayer, unless their property taxes are going to be cut, which I doubt that's the case. So there you go. Those dollars are going out and they're not coming back for all the taxpayers. And from my perspective, I look at that and I say, if the taxpayer need has been determined, what was the criteria used to determine that? That involves a little critical thinking. I mean, were the entire body of Stevens Point involved in the process? Was there focus groups? Were there a number of people who sat down and said, we as taxpayers need to determine if there's a need for this? Again, if my dollars as the investor are going out, I want to know if there's going to be a return, and obviously there's not. Does it make sense? I don't think so. So the last thing I would say is, as another one of my favorite sharks, Robert Herjavec, would say, is you got to know when to get on the wave and when to get off. And I'm thinking vote no is getting off the wave, and that's what I'd support. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Public hearing is still open. And Dan, our housing study is available online at stevenspoint.com. It was community-wide. See who's involved. How many taxpayers? Investors.
My name is Amy Anderson. I'm at 319 Maple Bluff. I came tonight and actually, in lieu of saving time for everyone, my main issue that I wanted to speak about was the environment, but a few before me have done a fantastic job. So just in listening to everyone here, there was quite a few issues my husband and I tried to discuss before we came, And we were listening carefully and trying to pay attention to which one yet hasn't been discussed so as not to waste time. But what I decided to do is come up and just repeat the things that are overwhelmingly concerning to us are the environment, safety, proper use of resources, blending our neighborhood and community with the surrounding areas. That's a huge hot topic in trying to community build. That's not being done. I'm also worried about taxation without representation. If this is being done, what other things for the people who live in Town of Hall? I'm also concerned about a wasted opportunity as we move forward and we need different housing and we're trying to plan something that seems very urban to me. Why are we wasting the opportunity to take something like this and move it into our downtown where there's empty spaces everywhere? I feel like I would like all of you to be sure that you've written a little note about each of these things that my neighbors and other community members have shared, because they are so important. And I too hope that you vote no to this proposed plan.
Hello, Dana Van Order, 420 Maple Bluff Road. We have multiple pages here, but everything that I had written out has been said. So thank you very much, wonderful neighbors, every single thing. Only thing I want to add in there is I'm born and raised from Denver, Colorado. Moved to a small town for a specific reason. And when I see that, that's taking me back to my urban landscape and what we moved away from. So we chose to live in this area for a reason. Our focus, my husband and I, were supposed to be on the increased traffic and how that's going to be impacting our streets, our neighborhood. We have 7 children, plus a little dog, plus a big dog that we take care of that we love like our own. We walk on our streets that have no sidewalks. We walk on our streets with no lighting. We walk on our streets with blind curves. It is a risk assessment, a huge liability to walk on our streets on a daily basis, multiple times a day. When you have daylight savings and it's dark by 4:30 and you're walking outside with your dogs because they need to be out after being inside all day, you take a increased liability that you will be hit. Our kids take a liability walking on that road every single day. My neighbors see us out constantly on our roads. The increased traffic and the way that you're proposing for all those 74-plus homes to be accessed will be coming down Maple Bluff and Gullah roads, who I've never once seen a Stevens Point police officer with jurisdiction on, and the speeds are excess of 25 miles per hour. Ask my neighbors when they hear me screaming to slow down on our roads. So my questions are, has there been a traffic assessment done? That's a question I would love to be answered. And then I want to leave with this quote. I promise I have it. You're never too old. You're never too bad. Never too late. Never too sick to start from scratch once again. Thank you very much.
Ma'am? A couple of things. First of all of our city officers are deputized by the sheriff, but it's not part of the normal patrol zone. That's why you probably don't see a lot of cities out there.
Never once.
That's the county jurisdiction. 2, you mentioned that you were supposed to be traffic volume?
Well, that was what our talking points were supposed to focus on.
Oh, I
So
see.
everything that was in our talking points has been covered, and we're not trying to be redundant.
Yep.
So that's just.
Excellent.
Thank
And
you.
since you took the time to write that down, anybody who has comments written, if you'd want to submit those, we'll make those part of the record. So
Let's
you can-
become chicken scratch after
Oh.
listening to everybody. Crossing
enough.
off, we did that, covered that.
5 pages
Thank
takes
you,
a lot
sir.
of time to write. I appreciate
Thank you very
your time
much.
doing that.
Thank you for hearing our concerns.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
Good evening. Dave Wills, 1909 Mary's Drive. First of all, Chair, I want to thank you for affording the extra time you're giving people, because I know there's a 3-minute general rule here, and it's important what you're doing.
Everybody's been really good.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. I also want to make note that all 5 members of the town board are here this evening. A few more will be speaking. I'm not going to go over my stuff. It's all been handled. Wonderful job by everybody here. It's just been great. But I do want to bring up a few things. This is the 3rd Plan Commission meeting we've had on this particular property. And it started at 31, it went to 39, then it went to 82, and back to 73. So it's interesting how it's been going. There's 2 major town concerns here with a lot of subs underneath it. You're hearing all the issues. One is the drainage district. Nick talked to that. We are on that drainage district. We're really concerned for flooding, primarily in our subdivisions. It's low over there right now. People's homes in the spring flood anyways. We got French drains going in all over the place. We don't need to exasperate it by not having a drainage system that doesn't work. We appreciate Ryan and Joel walking the property a few weeks ago to try to come up with some resolution. I'm hoping we can. Okay? The second thing is, and I'll avoid a whole bunch of this, the compatible use and size of adjacent property standard, I don't think has been met, Ryan. You had talked about that in your report, that there has to be these infillings need to have a compatible use, which they do, because they're both residential, and size of adjacent property standard. You said it is. I think we're far away from that. The average, Jim did a great job explaining what the average lot size of the town of Hull is surrounding this area. And by the way, it's all town of Hull. The city is south of there and across the street, but the immediate is town of Hull. Half acre to 3/4 to 1.75. Some of these lots are as low as 0.12 acre. So it's not anywhere close to being compatible in size. We sent out 113 mailers to neighbors, what we call the community, and that was over about 250 acres. 113 homes in 250 acres, and yet you've got 73 here in 24. So it doesn't seem to me to meet the compatibility. But other than that, I'm going to let this go. You made my job real easy by talking about the other items, and we've got a few more speakers, I think. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jan Way, and I live at 1203 Wilshire Drive in the town of Hull. I've been a town of Hull board supervisor for 10 years, and I also sit on the town of Hull's Plan Commission. In reading Ryan's report, he alludes several times to the City of Stevens Point's comprehensive plan and how this parcel or area fits in with the city's plan for future development. It's always been fascinating that the city has a plan for land for other municipalities. A few years ago, our boundary committee kept us informed on the efforts being made to lay out a direction for a community development approach between the town and the city in terms of growth and development. I think both municipalities met about 6 or 7 times. There was even discussion about having a joint plan commission between the 2 communities. What a great approach to planning. Unfortunately, these talks stalled. I'm also aware that the town has formally reached out by letter to city leadership to pick up discussions on 2 different occasions, and no responses to those invites have been answered. Meanwhile, 7 parcels located in the town of Hull, equaling 152 acres, have been purchased in 2023 alone, all on the east side of the city in this general area. Taking a community approach to planning allows the opportunity for both municipalities and its citizens to grow and thrive together. We currently have a one-sided approach. The city may prosper, but at the expense of the town of Hull and its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Shane Shireman, 5664 Regent Street. See some familiar faces in here, some good neighbors. This guy, Matt and I are on a board together for Habitat for Humanity. So I am radically opposed to this on the grounds of the trout. I'm an elected member of the Wisconsin Conservation Congress. Today I spoke to the trout team. Lost Creek is a class 1 trout stream. I'm assuming most people don't know what that means. A lot of conservation words people just forget about. Class 1 streams mean that the fish recruit themselves. They don't require stocking by your taxpayer dollars. Okay, only 40% of the streams in our state are class 1 streams, which means the rest of the streams in the state are stocked by taxpayer dollars, okay, or nonprofit, Trout Unlimited, or the 12 Apostles Muskie Clubs, whatever. Okay, so a lot of you don't know as well, as a member of the Conservation Congress, the DNR has a $14 million deficit, okay, a really bad deficit. And you know what they're cutting first? Stocking. It's basically done, okay, that's the done deal. Is the city gonna pay for stocking efforts when there's not a chance of those fish not being affected? Every time a bureaucrat or a city planner, no offense, whoever you are, says it's not going to affect the stream, don't worry, the fish will be okay. They won't be. Trout are tremendously weak and sensitive. They'll die from anything. And then you want to culvert up the stream, they're going to be dead. It's just a reality. And then we're going to have either a non-class 1 stream that taxpayer dollars have to pay to fix, which they will, or us conservationists put it out of our pocket to stock them, all because someone said, oh, don't worry, they'll be all right, when they won't be. So as a member of Conservation Congress and working with the trout team before I came here, I'm radically opposed to this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing me out. My name is John Hauptman at 506 Leonard Street in the town of Hull. I live on the northwest corner of Regent and Leonard. My brief history for me is I lived in Stevens Point on Dixon Street, right across from the bowling alley. I paid the monthly utility bills. I shoveled the darn sidewalk. Sidewalk needed to be repaired. I had to pay for it. I have a son who had a prenatal stroke. He's got left-sided weakness. The sidewalks were safe for him to ride his bike. Where we are right now on Leonard Street, in that area, 10 times more safer. Something that I don't believe has been addressed tonight is our well water. I know for a fact the city of Stevens Point has a bad history of raiding Hull's well waters. And you're going to have to drill land, you're going to have to drill for water down there, and it's used to take more water from me and my neighbors. So I ask you to vote no, although I've got a good feeling you made up your mind already. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea Olson, 410 Franklin. So I'm going to be what everybody's going to be mad at tonight, because I'm going to bring some perspective to this entire issue. This is not an experiment. And I also don't appreciate my neighborhood being called a ghetto, because I live in downtown Stevens Point. And on 24 acres, 24.64 acres, we have about 130 homes. Those lots are about 1.4 acres, and some people have double lots. There was a recent development in 2018 where they put that is accurate, they put 0 lot line houses up, and some of them filled in, and there is somebody that actually bought 2 lots plus 2 behind it, so now they have 2 lots, their parents have 2 lots next to them, and then they have 2 lots behind it so that they could have larger lots. So that does happen. But those lots on those 0 lot line houses are only 0.48 or 0.07 acres. So if the city decided to do 0.07 acres on 24.65 acres, you could actually end up with 391 0 lot line houses there. So This 7282 is sounding a little bit better. And this also isn't like a trial run either, because look at Plover. Look at what they're doing on the edge of Plover. Denyon Homes is doing 2 developments out there right now. And when you're saying that some of the people that are buying these zero lot line houses, you don't want them as your neighbors, well, one on, or let's see, Green Pasture Trail, zero lot line house on an 8,712 square foot lot sold for $259,000 in November. You have their .29 acres lots, Denyon Lily Ranch style house that is 2,000 square feet on Morningstar Lane. That sold for $374,000. If you look at the development, these are ones past where Tree Acres was, you will see that the density that they're doing out there is actually greater than what may happen here. Also, with safety being concerned because of increased traffic, 72 additional houses, figure 2 people per house, that's 140 some additional cars going past per day. You think that's a lot, but then you start dividing it out 12 hours per day, how many cars per that, and then also those cars tend to congregate during specific times of the day. So you aren't having a huge influx of traffic. And also with the safety, Portage County just got a grant for improving the bike system and walking trails and that stuff. So anybody complaining about bike lanes shouldn't be complaining about them because they can help this situation. And why isn't the lighting good there? Is that not good now because of how the town of Hull's been handling lighting? If this is an opportunity with Stevens Point to help town of Hull have better lighting and sidewalks and improve on safety, that is something that really should be talked about and considered. Also, the trade-off with the lower priced lots and more infrastructure, the price for 4 houses increasing in value across 10 years is a lot greater than 1 house on 1 big lot increasing a lot less. So that's why when you look at the trade-off of smaller lots versus larger ones, that's another thing to consider. I really do. Also, we have had a housing task force study been going on, and we're trying to find places to put houses. Downtown doesn't have that space. There's a few infill lots left. That's why Point keeps going out further. They also said that it was a mistake how large that they made the lots past the airport when that was the last larger housing development, because we're still short on homes. Yes, everybody could go to Plover, but then you get no new homes, no new builds in Stevens Point, and that does impact our taxes too. But I do hope that a full environmental impact study will be done, because taking care of our waters is very, very, very important. Also making sure that having somebody similar, like Lynn Markham, who is the land use specialist with UW Expansions, is involved here. And I'm expecting she probably has been involved because she is also on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and she has, she's wonderful. If anybody wants to talk to her about this, I recommend it. But my concern is making these all R3 lots, because R2, you could do a mix of R2 and R3 for these properties to limit how many zero lot line houses could be there. R2 doesn't allow for zero lot line houses.
We're only talking about the plat review, not zoning at this point.
Okay, well then, if that is something that you guys might want to be aware of then. But the density that is being proposed isn't that much. I live downtown, I grew up in Plover, had our half-acre lots. Half-acre, quarter-acre are very, very common now. And when you do look at the neighborhoods, when you transition from smaller lots to larger lots, you have that transition. This is that transition area. The thing is that all these lots that are there right now were built and created mostly 30 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I remember when my friend's house was getting built out there. And that lot on Regent Street is a little bit over a half acre. But you can you don't need the big lots. You do buy where you want a larger lot, but you shouldn't, like if people want these size houses, which are selling out in Plover, they should also have, there's nothing wrong with having them here too. It's a proven concept out there that it's working. It can be here too.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up. Anybody in the overflow room who might be listening, it's thinning out over here. Yeah, if you could get in line over here, that would be great.
Hello, thanks. Eric Anderson, 319 Maple Bluff Road. So I don't think anyone here disagrees that there's a shortage of homes, that, you know, smaller acre lots, smaller homes can sell and are needed. We're not speaking to that. We're not speaking to Plover. We're speaking to our neighborhood. And so I want, you know, that's what we're here to talk about, okay? And it's most definitely not a blend of any fashion. You're going to have, and call it what you will, and we don't want to offend anybody. You know, I mean, I thought, when I saw this, and no offense to anyone, but it looked more like a trailer park. So, and I'm not here to offend anybody that lives in Plover on similar sized lots, but compared to the neighborhood we live in, that's what it would look like, okay? So again, no offense to anybody. We all know people need smaller lots, lots of homes. We're not going to speak to Plover or any other neighborhoods. These are our concerns for where we live.
Thank you. Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
Diane Summers, 292 Maple Bluff Drive Road. I have two things that I don't think were brought up. One is that none of us were really notified about this, and we really set up some telephone lines that, or text lines, because it was just amazing that even the people at the county, when I called them about 4 weeks ago, didn't even know this was happening. And I don't think that's, I think when you do something like this big project, people should know this is happening in our neighborhood, and we didn't even know. We educated ourselves, and we're trying to educate the commission here and also the council what's happening, because they really don't know. This definitely does not look like our neighborhood. I mean, we're just not happy with this. You also have some other areas that would have been much better financially to approach. You bought 83 acres, the Bigford property behind Sherrill Tire on the corner of Badger and Highway 10. There's 83 acres there, and you also have sewer and water already. So that might have been a better financial thing to do. This, with the price that you paid for this, $450,000 for 23 acres, and the $2 million of development costs, is costing 73 lots, $33,561.64. Now that doesn't seem like a very fine financial decision to make. You also have 40 acres that you bought from McCodlow, and I think there's sewer and water very close there too. So maybe that would have been a better place to put this, and it would be a fresh start. You're trying to stick this little jam these homes in this other acre, and it's just not feasible. It's not going to help the city. It's not going to help the neighborhood. It's just going to downgrade everybody. But I do wish you would be more transparent. Yes, that's what I'm working for. Thank you. Because we didn't know what was happening, and once people found out, I mean, we're not happy. So I wish you could do a better plan. And if you walk it, it would really make a nice park with all those ravines going in and gullies. I think it'd make a beautiful park.
Thank you, Diane. On the transparency part, though, we've been working with Nick for a while. Hasn't he been talking to you about it? No. I mean, this project has been going on since Mr. Anderson owned it, so I think most people knew something was going on. So, what do you think we could do better? And I want to save that, hold that thought till we get to after the public hearing, because I'm always looking for ways to do things better. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Mark Fritchie. I live at 553 Helen Lane in the town of Hull. I am an elected official. I've been on the Town of Hull Board of Supervisors for 3 years. I've also served the Town of Hull citizens as a volunteer firefighter for going on 47 years right now. I am currently the Deputy Chief on the Fire Department, and I lead the town EMS First Responders Services. In my capacity on the board, I was a member of the Stevens Point Town of Hull Boundary Work Group, and pretty much everything that I wanted to touch on today has been addressed except one issue. My comments I'm going to direct at the extension of Evelyn Court, going out and connecting in with Maple Bluff. That part of the plot going in there, you were sending traffic out of their way, heading north in order to go south, sending them out of their way to a street that has a dead end on one way and cannot be considered as a through street due to the Plover River watershed, and the current ones that are connecting it have access to them. It would be across from Maple Bluff area. It's connected, achieving Maple, the connection is being achieved by Maple Bluff from Highway 10, Duncan Drive, which is just east of the plat that we're looking at, and Sandy Lane, which is just west of the Duncan Drive area. If the connection is meant to be there as a safety tool for emergencies, there are other ways to accomplish that task without spending the money on a portion of the street that is not needed and sending traffic to a closed-end street. The Town of Hull is part of the Metro Fire Service Group, and a community approach to handling emergency traffic can be worked out to keep everyone safe. Please consider alternatives to achieving your goals instead of connecting up with Maple Bluff. So please eliminate this connection. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
Good evening, Steve Tatro, 595 Lost Creek Lane, Stevens Point. I live in the Town of Hull. I built a home out there 15 years ago. My big concern, 2 points that weren't addressed tonight. The school, Bannock School. I don't have kids that go there anymore, but if you add 73 homes, how many more students are going to be in that school? Is that been taken into consideration? Because last time I checked, those classes were fairly large. So that's a consideration. Is Bannock going to have to add on to their school? Another referendum? You know, that question is going to come up. And then one last point, March 20th, 2018. We had 30+ inches of snow, Nick, you remember, and then 6 days later it rained and it was 70 degrees. Lost Creek Lane showed up again. So it ran right down Burlesky Road, entered the property to the north, and flooded that road for 2.5 days, I think it was. So if we mess with that waterway, it's going to be a bigger problem. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ernie Neuenfeld, 601 North Maple Bluff Court. I live right near this. Also like to bring up Bannock School. As far as your traffic flow pattern, you're going to send a lot of traffic right through a school zone. This is already a traffic mess, and you're going to send a whole bunch of people through it. The other thing that hasn't been brought up, a lot of my neighbors have said things very eloquently. Nobody's come right out and said this is going to detrimentally impact our property values. We've all talked about other things. My home value is going down if this goes in. And I'd like to address something that you, Mayor Wiesich, said about this has been going on for a while. This is what was presented 2 years ago. This is what's presented now. It's twice as dense. It's a bait and switch. So don't say we knew about it. It's a bait and switch.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open. Public hearing is still open. Okay, no one else is moving. Go ahead. We got several people online waiting to speak too, so as soon as we're done with the in-person people, we're going to go to the online.
My name is Tom Schultz. I live at 5679 Jurgella Lane. I'm here in part on behalf of about a dozen of my neighbors in the same Jurgella neighborhood that, on account of children and families, couldn't be here this evening, had other commitments. We all have the same concern, which I believe has been, the last few things have been addressed here by the last couple individuals. It doesn't fit the neighborhood. Huge safety concerns. The traffic in the area is already somewhat ridiculous. And it's not just the addition of the homes, but the traffic coming through on Brulowski from up towards Jordan Pond or Jordan Park and the like. It's a very well-used thoroughfare. It is an alternate to I-39 and County Highway J by just about everybody in the area. I've lived there for a few months shy of 20 years. I have seen my property borders the ditch or the waterway. I have helped neighbors pump water out of their basements. I have been fortunate enough to not have that, but it's been within feet of my back door as well. 2018 being the worst I've experienced so far. No one in the neighborhood is for it, not at all. And to Mr. Summers' point, the 20-foot alleged access to the waterway, in the event something serious were to happen and any significant maintenance or work needed to be done to the waterway, 20 feet is not going to allow the equipment necessary to do the work needed. It just won't. It's physically impossible. 20 feet's half of the distance maybe that would truly be utilized in the event something were to happen.
Thank you. Anyone else in person wishing to speak? Anyone else in person? All right, not seeing anybody here, so then I will go to our online people. Let's see, we have Samsung. You wish to speak? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Samsung? I don't have a name. It's just your phone. You had mentioned you wish to speak. Now's your chance.
I think you need to click that.
I did already, 3 times. Old IT guy. Samsung, if you're still there, you can put something in the chat if you're having problems. There we go. Not allowing me to unmute. I don't know. I don't know what the codes are, or the buttons you have to push on the Samsung to unmute too. It's not on our end. If you'd like, go ahead and type in your comments. I don't know that we have another option. Trevor Rourke, I know you had mentioned that you may want to speak. Interesting. I don't know, you see me clicking it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody in the room is seeing me click the unmute. I don't know what's going on.
Why don't we take a 5-minute recess?
Why don't we do that? Let's take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back. It is, what do we got here?
7:46.
I got 7:45, so let's come back at 7:50. We'll stand in recess until then. 7:50, we're going to reconvene. I'm not sure that we have a solution to some of the problem, but it is working as we expected. The computers, if you're on remotely via computer, the request to unmute works, and Mr. Rourke is going to be next up. It didn't work on the Samsung phone, but I seem to remember something with a phone. You had to hit a couple of keys. I don't know what they are, though. But so I am going to show everybody this. If you want to direct your attention to the screen. Kim Gala-Well, granddaughter of the original owner. She lived there for over 80 years, loved the town of Stevens Point. Her wishes were for the property to be turned into a park, for the community. The amount of wildlife that depends on trees in the creek is far more than anyone realizes, and she doesn't have access to a computer. Kim, I apologize for the technical difficulties. If you would like to come in and talk to Director Kronosky, we can take some testimony in person, or you could write it and send it in to City Hall. So at this point, Trevor Rourke, you are unmuted and the public hearing is still open. Proceed.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, okay. Trevor Rourke, 601 Washington Avenue, all the way on the other side of town. So 2021 or so, I did speak against this subdivision plat when the city didn't own it. And even though I do appreciate the increase in the number of lots for added density, I'm sorry, but I'm still against this for several reasons. One, thanks Director Kronosky for mentioning the need to have enough density to afford the infrastructure. There was a very important discussion about infrastructure liability, projecting numbers in the 2021 meetings, but these have been omitted by staff in the report. I'm just wondering if staff can please bring these numbers back to the table so the Planning Commission and the public can be informed on this subdivision and determine if it can actually pay for itself after the second generation of infrastructure. In other words, will the property taxes generated afford the reconstruction of the streets and utilities in 30 to 50 or so years? Really, I think this should be at the forefront of the economic conversation, guiding our city's decisions on growth, not really an extraterritorial map. Secondly, there are limits to growth in all things, really. We can't grow infinitely as humans. It's unsustainable, and lives will be negatively affected if we continue down this same path we've been at it for, who knows, a century plus with this growth pattern. The climate crisis is a great indicator of this untethered growth around the Wisconsin cities, villages, towns, and all over the United States. Third, preserving land with trees and wetlands like this is very important to our health, the wildlife, and our groundwater. I'd suggest the current resulting clean water is more important than this middle-class housing project. Fourth, this area isn't walkable. I know it's been mentioned a few times tonight, but my point is that it's actually already unaffordable to lower income earners since it requires car ownership. You really can't walk to the grocery store. You can't walk to run errands. You can probably not even walk to school there because it might be too dangerous or perceived as dangerous. Lastly, if the city were to allow the already approved recommendations and values of the Green Tier Legacy, the pathway to sustainable Stevens Point, Vision Zero, and safe routes to schools, policies and plans, this project would not even be considered. I do hope you decide to turn this application down tonight, or at the very least, bring those numbers on infrastructure liability back to the table at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Anyone else online wishing to speak? You can raise your virtual hand or type something into the chat, and I can unmute you or allow you to unmute. I guess is the right way. Try to. Public hearing is still open. Public hearing remains open. For the third and final time, public hearing is open. Giving it a little extra time just in case with all the technical difficulties we've had. All right, seeing no one else wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed. We'll bring it back to the commissioners, but before we do, I want to recap my notes. I know many people were taking notes, and it's all recorded, so we're going to review this. We did have a public information meeting in February. We had about 50 people that attended. including the town chairman. So I know this isn't new. We may not have known about it, but as I said, I'm always looking for ways to improve our communication. Sign in?
Did anybody not sign in?
Anybody not sign in? We need you to sign in just so we have a record of that, please. So we don't have to do it here at the meeting, but contact my office. If there's a way that we can better inform people of what we're doing, and we put it on our website, we put it in the newspaper, we put it out to in this case, the town chairman was made aware of it. We don't have the ability to send out letters to every person for everything we consider. So I need to be clear on that. But if there's other ways, maybe you listen to the radio, and we could advertise or put our meetings on a radio or something. We have our community calendar. We've got a city website. We've got the city radio station, city television station. We don't have infinite resources, but if there's something we can do to help people know what's going on, we want to do that. The points that I took, and thank you all very much for the testimony, ditch maintenance was a big concern. I think we've come a long way in addressing that, keeping that easement and some options that we could still work on. Bigger lots was said multiple times. Some of the concerns were that these lots are too small. Parkland was mentioned a couple of times. There's no parkland or green space available in this. Do an endangered species or archaeology survey, traffic assessment. Walking safety was a concern, sidewalks, blind curves, lighting, some of which our ordinances already address for developments, but there's things we can look at there. The trout stream protection, of course, is very critical. And then the extension of Evelyn Court with some traffic concerns. So those are the ones that I took away as the bigger points that I think there's some work to do yet. And before we go too much further, I don't know if the commission feels the same way, but I think we can take this back to staff and have them address some of the concerns and try and work within the guidelines that this public has put forth and bring something back in the future. Maybe we're moving just a little bit too fast on this, even though the development has been talked about for several years. So yes, in different incarnations, but the development itself, people have been well aware of, because when Mr. Anderson owned it, we had talked about this process, and that was several years ago. So I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Mr. Beacom.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of your points. It seems to me that there's still quite a bit to be addressed yet, and not ready for formal action. Listening to the audience, I agree. I like the idea of green space for families. The school is a concern. In terms of affordability, nothing new construction is affordable. But Stevens Point does need more single-family and two-family homes. There's not a lot of options to build those. But the reality is there's too many questions for me. Land use is going to change. It changes around me where I own right now. I used to live in Evelyn Court. I know that neighborhood well, but that's the reality. Over time, our land changes, and I would like to see a plan that takes into consider some of these concerns that were brought forth tonight.
Is that a motion to refer back to staff?
I would make that motion, yes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second
Seconded by Kneebone. Discussion. Anything the commissioners want to see?
Mainly with regard to the drainage way and the surface water and what staff can do about that. I like the idea of an outlot. It's one of those things where it's going to have to be maintained for a long time, and I didn't like the idea of having a bunch of individual maintainers, and I think it just would behoove everybody if somebody, maybe the city, just accepts responsibility for it. You could just do a 100-foot setback from that north property line, and then you have this green corridor. I don't know if there are options for developing that as a park or just leave it as a natural area, but I think separating out that drainage way is an important part of the reevaluation of this plot.
Noted, thank you. Director, is that drainage district, or maybe, Nick, maybe you know, is that drainage district like a legal district?
Well,
Or is it just kind of a
so there's a
handshake
drainage district that exists on the east side of Berlowski. This area is there's an easement agreement between, I think there's 4 or 5 farmers who are part of the drainage district, the town of Hull, and now the city of Stevens Point as owner of the property. So, you know, if you've ever been back there, you know that the creek is about 15 feet down into a valley. And so we would, and we've been trying to work with the Summers, who have been representing the 4 or 5 farmers and the town of Hull, to work out some type of agreement where development could occur, taking into serious consideration the creek, the ditch, whatever you want to refer to it as. So, and we have been, we walked it with Mr. Summers, general manager. We were under the impression that the 20-foot easement would be sufficient. Obviously, Mr. Summers disagrees with that, and so does his attorney. So those are things that we can work through. I would recommend that instead of just simply kicking this back to staff to listen through, 25 or so comments from the public, give us some clear direction. You can still, because this is a preliminary plat, you're still going to go through the final plat process, which could take place next month. It could be a few months out. However, staff can work through these issues. Make a recommendation with specific items in mind. Address the easement or outlot concerns on the north side. Address lot density, so that the council can either vote up or down the preliminary plat, and we can at least move forward towards a final plat to keep the project moving forward in some form or fashion.
And if it is okay with the commissioner who made the motion, some of the things that I had mentioned there on those bullet points, I think are things that we need to work on a little bit further. And if you add some or delete some, I'm completely okay with that. But we talked about the ditch maintenance, whether that's an outlot or some sort of resolution there that works for everybody. Larger lot sizes, green space and parkland, the surveys for endangered, archaeological, or traffic assessments, the walking safety, but again, I think a lot of that's addressed in our existing ordinances, requiring sidewalks, lighting, those sorts of things. Anything that I'm missing?
I'm just curious how it impacts the school. I mean, what we have there, both in terms of traffic, but in terms of density.
Okay. Talk to the school. By the way, get out and vote tomorrow. If you haven't done so already. Commissioner?
I'd like to revisit that drainage issue again. Ryan, you mentioned, could I get a copy of those drainage easements by any way? Sure. Chance? I mean, I'd be interested to look at them, see what they say. It's curious, you commented that it's a drainage, not quite a district on the east side, but it's a little bit unclear what's on the west side, and that's the part that we're getting. Is that a navigable stream? Is that a water of the United States?
I can tell you it is a navigable stream. There was a very brief internal conversation about can you culvert the whole ditch? And DNR told us no, that was not something they would permit. So just to clarify for everybody in the crowd here, we are not culverting any of the existing ditch or Lost Creek. I mean, our hope is to keep it as natural as possible. City staff, the city planning staff, and engineering staff believe that that's a significant cultural asset to the area, and so we don't want to see that impacted any more than our friends at the Summers and the farmers out there and the rest of the neighborhood. So that's why we have been trying to take some steps to address the concern of if there is a need to get in there and clear out the creek or the ditch, that those who have the rights to do so via the easement are able to do so. And that's part of the reason that Joe Street goes to the north lot line, because it's a public right-of-way and anybody can access, based on the public right-of-way.
Anything else, commissioners?
Yeah, on a different matter a little bit, but generally I am okay with the higher density, the zero lot line, at least some aspects for it, and I don't know if we could mix this up. Clearly, that's not a big seller with the town, but again, that's kind of why we got this and what we're looking at, and I don't know if it's specifically the lot size or the number of lots or the number of people, for instance. So, and I don't know that we can accommodate everybody. And, you know, I agree with this public hearing. We've listened, we've heard, and taking it into consideration, but we also have, you know, the city concerns, and that too should be, you know, looked at and factored in. And again, is it a number of total houses? Is it a number of, well, so it's not the lot size if you put a couple small lots and a couple big lots. So what is the issue out there? And that ties in with the public safety, that ties in with the school issue, and I don't know the traffic study issue. I don't know how much of that has been done, but those are at least some of the concerns that I hear. And I'm not quite sure if it's a specifically number of lots or a lot size or how that works and how that factors in with the, you know, as Trevor said, the infrastructure liability. So those are other issues that certainly need to be looked at, and if you could have some, you know, points to address that coming back, I think that'd be good.
Okay. Commissioner Alder Kneebone. Commissioner Alder. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
I think I'm on that quarter lot on Sandpiper that somebody said is an anomaly, and it's too big for me. Although it did give me the opportunity to buy a riding lawnmower because I can't walk that lot behind a push mower anymore. I like my neighborhood. I'm not too far down the road from where this is going to be, and it's going to look a lot like the neighborhood I live in right now. I'm in a zero lot line. It was affordable for me in 2006, and if all things were equal now, it would still be the only affordable option for me now. I could never afford to live in a large 2,500 square foot house on an acre lot. I wouldn't want to begin with. When we give people options, I know a lot of seniors like me want to downsize. We don't want two-story houses. We don't want to go down to the basement to do our laundry once a week or twice a week. That ability to downsize to a nice house frees up a larger home for a family. So as the housing stock turns over, you provide options for people at different levels of housing styles. In terms of parks over there, my goodness sakes, Parkdale Park on Badger, East Oaks and East Wood, the Hull side's got the playground equipment. In the winter now, when we have cold weather.
When?
We have an ice rink there. The park department's flooding the ice rink on the city side, or flooding some of the park on the city side to provide some winter opportunities for kids in the neighborhood. The Plover River Crossing, when it's constructed next year, is going to link that whole east side safely to the Green Circle Trail and the west side of Stevens Point. There's a project to reclaim a meadow down there. There's going to be a lot of green space. There's a walking and biking path on Walter now. Sandpiper is a good road to drive down, to ride a bike down. You can come over there, come down by Bannock, go down Walter Street, come over to Sandpiper. You can go to Parkdale Park, the hockey rink, the soccer fields, and we just set aside the 30-acre woodlot on the Bickford property. That's now the Hall Nature Reserve. And the vision, at least for me as the alder of that district now and someone who lives in that neighborhood, is to create a silent sport recreation area there. So hopefully that over time will develop into a gem of a recreational area for folks in the neighborhood. And in terms of property values, my house is worth $100,000 more than it was in 2006. That's a pretty darn good return on my investment, I would say. My property taxes have gone up, but I like what my property taxes provide for me. I like the fact that we will spread the pain around with a lot more houses than just 20 or 30. I like the fact that city water and city sewer will protect the environment over there. We're not putting in septic tanks. We're not putting in wells. I think we're doing a lot of things to preserve the area. As Commissioner Beacom says, things change. When I was a student here in 91, where my house sits right now is a farm field. A friend of mine used to ride her horse around there. I love that neighborhood. I wouldn't want to live anyplace else. And as for Highway 10, I was pushing for a roundabout when the DOT was talking about making those changes, but the state, they were constrained, because that's going to be horrible no matter what. The traffic from here is not going to significantly make that any worse than it already is, I don't think. I think that's probably about it. And like Andrea, I'm getting kind of tired of my zero lot line being called, like a trailer park.
Or ghetto.
Or a ghetto. It's a great option. I've got everything on one floor. I got my riding lawnmower. I'm a happy camper. So, it's a great option for people.
Hang on.
It really
Hang on,
is.
because we were all very courteous when people were speaking at the lectern. We didn't have the chit-chat. We didn't have the peanut gallery comments. I expect the same respect at this table. So please, keep your comments to yourself and let the people speak.
So I'm just saying, I think we have some issues to address here. I think there are some significant concerns. Traffic safety for especially kids, because there will be kids coming into that neighborhood. If we can design this the safest way we can, we have that obligation. And the environmental preservation, that's my stock and trade. My master's degree was in urban planning with an environmental preservation emphasis. So you channel development away from sensitive environmental areas. So those two are my concerns, the traffic safety and the creek, and I think we can address those.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Rice.
A handful of comments and maybe questions too. Again, like my fellow commissioners, I think the residents of the area have brought up a number of points that we can appreciate to a certain level. Again, we are tasked, with looking out for the interests of the city. So our perspective is different to some extent, but again, we have a certain amount of appreciation for a lot of your concerns, and I thank people for coming out. One significant change that's noticeable to me from previous one is kind of the complexity of the road structure, and maybe it's kind of a chicken and egg thing for the city. We want to add density, so we need more roads to just access more lots. If we and adding more roads adds more cost, right? And it's like the more roads we add, the more kind of costs we have for sewer and water hookups and the road itself, and then the more lots we have to squeeze in there. The previous owner made the comment about upfront costs. It's kind of a wash if you do several big lots up front with less road versus more complex infrastructure and many more lots. Up front, I think Mr. Rourke and the city understands that in the long run, the additional density has significant financial advantages, again, for the city. So I personally would maybe like to see less complexity in that infrastructure at the sacrifice of some of that density. That's maybe my opinion. I certainly would like more, more information, a better understanding too about the way that the ditch is currently and maintained and has been maintained historically, and what the options the city has to kind of ensure that consistent level of maintenance. That's something that we obviously don't encounter in the city normally, right? This kind of privately owned drainage ditch from the neighboring agricultural area. So a better understanding of that would be helpful for us. a number of things have kind of come up and are a little bit unusual to me. I'll make the comment, I don't envy the city planning staff, and to some extent for us, one of the gentlemen who spoke said, no one disagrees we need more housing, right? So maybe we don't all agree to that, but there's kind of a general consensus, we need more housing. Residents in Stevens Point don't want us to build anything more than a single-story tall. So we can't add houses in the air, and the town hall says we can't take any of their land to build single-story houses out in their property. So the city of Stevens Point has a pretty hard time adding houses. This is a unique opportunity to get access to a really significant piece of property and do kind of a contiguous development, as opposed to the immense amount of cost and challenge of doing one at a time infill development. That's pretty slow going, and it doesn't make an impact very quickly. Something like this can have much more impact much more quickly. So there are some benefits to that. I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask city staff. A number of people suggest there are a lot of other places just as good as this to build. Is that true? Are there other good opportunities of this scale within the city that are kind of on the radar right now?
That's a very insightful question.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sorry, I was
Your Honor, I proceed.
speculating that it was insightful.
Are their ideas good? You know, I'll let Ryan speak to that, but that's really a matter of perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, the city has been acquiring property on the east side with the intention that we have a housing need we need to fill. We haven't had developers pursuing that in the city of Stevens Point, and there's a number of reasons for that, most notably really inexpensive land in the village of Plover, right? Up until 2017, the city and the village kept pretty consistent in terms of new construction for single and zero lot line homes. 2017, the Portage County took a ton of land on tax deed in the old Tree Acres golf course area and sold it at pennies on the dollar to developers, and then the village paid off special assessments, and so those developers were more concentrated down there. As those 40s were acquired and developed, and now they're nearing the tail end of you know, the really significantly reduced land costs, we are seeing another increase of demand in single-family housing in the city of Stevens Point to be a little bit more equal to what we had saw previous to that. So the city did acquire, as previously mentioned, property just east of the Hunter Oak subdivision, which is just south of what is now the Dunhams, Big Lots, Ross Dress for Less. There are some development challenges out there, including high groundwater, and so instead of having the ability to have a basement, you're talking about slab on grade, and so there are some environmental challenges that we're going to have to work through as that becomes developed. This area, though, really, I think the driving factor of us pursuing this is based on, as mentioned a few times tonight, was the original boundary agreement discussion. We had worked with the town on a possible boundary agreement. It had gotten relatively far in the process, and unfortunately, there were some things that the city and the town just couldn't agree on financially, and so those conversations stalled out. But the whole concept of those boundary agreement discussions included this area as being serviced by city sewer and water and annexable into the city for development purposes. In the staff report, you know, you can look at some of the mapping that was included that identify future development opportunities, and being cognizant that some of the residential areas in this neighborhood have some water quality issues, and you know, there's opportunity for us to provide sewer and water to those folks in existing subdivisions. So there's always opportunity, but there's challenges with each development that we try to do, whether it's groundwater, whether it's access to infrastructure as well. I can speak a little bit to the road configuration. Part of the reason that Joe Street and Leonard went in is planners like to see more of a grid-style pattern because it provides additional connectivity for pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic. Technically, once the area south of Gala Road becomes developed, and that could be several years out, Joe Street will connect down to Wildwood. or Walter, and I'm blanking on the street name, that's right.
Probably
Walter, thank you.
Walter, yeah.
And so you'll have direct access from this area to Walter Street, which gives you direct access to the businesses on US Highway 10 and makes it much easier as opposed to going around. So planners typically like to see that grid-style pattern. More notably, it was better for the city's utility to put a deep sewer pipe in the Joe Street right-of-way to provide sewer to this area and future development on the northeast side of the city. One, the cost itself, if we went up Burlowski, which we had talked about, that's a really expensive project. The pavement that had to be removed and replaced, concrete, asphalt, it made more sense for us financially to go up Joe Street, and that's why you see, within the PIM that occurred a few weeks ago at the Town Hall, why we were choosing to go up Joe Street as opposed to Burlowski. At some point, we talk about larger lots out here, it just doesn't become financially feasible or responsible for the city to look at doing a subdivision if our lots get too big. It just, there comes a point where that equilibrium just isn't there for us. And so that's why you see a higher density development, as I explained earlier, on this specific lot, as opposed to what are known as piano key lots, where you have narrow lots but are really deep, or a lower density development here as well. So I hope I answered some of your questions.
Yeah.
Anything else, Commissioner?
One other comment, and maybe looking for a little bit of feedback too, and it's related to walkability. A number of residents brought this up, and we've heard this a number of other times in projects that come up in the Town of Hall. And I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm somewhat sarcastic, and there's a little tongue-in-cheek, but there's this simultaneous argument that walking on the roads without sidewalks, without lights, is this like breathtaking, it's like we have to navigate this hellscape that we wouldn't wish on anyone else, and we love it. And we don't want, we don't want city sidewalks and city lights. It's a little bit confusing to me. Again, I apologize, no offense meant, but it is confusing to me. There's kind of this simultaneous argument. It's too dangerous for us. We should be allowed to do it, and we like it, but other people shouldn't move into the area and have to endure that. I'm curious to ask city staff, I know this would be part of the city, and there are certain things we could do, sidewalks and lighting on this. It is still surrounded by the Town of Hall, and maybe this would be an opportunity for a little bit of more collaboration and some compromise to, would there be an opportunity to add some of that kind of walkability infrastructure to the neighboring area? Do you think adding some density has a natural calming effect on the traffic pattern, even though it will definitely add density to the traffic? Do you think there's a net benefit to that at all? Can you touch on again, that, traffic and walkability, maybe?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, there is, as part of the bid to add a sidewalk on the north side of Gala Road from Burlowski west to Duncan. And that was after, and then we had reduced the number of driveways on Gala by removing about 10 zero lot lines along Gala Road. And that was done in response to some of the concerns that were brought to us as part of the PIM. I think if planners had their way, and we don't, and I don't envy us either, I would say that a curb gutter sidewalk with a boulevard is a preferred option. The challenge is just the sheer cost, right? In order for us to justify curb gutter sidewalk, you have to have dense development that's going to make the return on investment for the municipality justified. In this case here, what's proposed outside of the Gala Road is a rural cross-section. If you were to add sidewalk on Evelyn Court or Joe Street or Leonard or the unnamed road along the north lot line, you're looking at a rural cross-section with, now you're tightening up the swales that help manage the stormwater that comes off of the road. Those get a little deeper. Residents get concerned about the deepness of the swales. You can add sidewalk, but now you're talking about 4 to 6 inches of additional concrete. And so if I had my way, I'd have sidewalks in front of my house, but I don't have that opportunity. You
can put them there.
I would gladly. I like sidewalks. I think they're really important, but it just becomes something that's cost prohibitive. And when you have an area that truly is, and I know this might get some chuckles, but low density, you don't have the same risk that you run into in more urban environments where you have, like in the core of downtown, when you have, closer to the 8 or 9, 10 units per acre, as opposed to the 2 or 2.5 that we're seeing out here. You don't have the risk of such a significant vehicular traffic increases that, the risk just isn't quite there. In a previous life, I was a planner for one of the fastest growing municipalities in the state of Minnesota. We would do 400, 500, 600 lot subdivisions, and those would call for traffic impact analysis. And a small subdivision like this, Burlowski Road serves as a minor arterial street. Maple Bluff serves as a neighborhood collector street. I don't necessarily see the need for a TIA, but if that's a request of the commission, we can definitely go and get an idea of what that would cost. But you're going to see the traffic pattern most notably go out on Burlowski Road from the unnamed road along the north side of the property, or Gala Road. You might see a little bit more on Maple Bluff, especially if you have folks that are dropping children off at Bannock Elementary, but majority traffic is going to be going to Burlowski Road because there's not a lot of employment areas in this part of town. They're going to employment areas south, in the business park, or they're maybe getting on the highway and going up north. There's all sorts of options, and quite frankly, a TIA is only going to be an estimate of what you'll see for traffic impact in this area. But if that's something that the committee would like to see, we can definitely do that, and I would ask the town hall to share in that cost, because I do think that that's a major concern of theirs, and if it's so, they should be able to put some finances towards that.
Thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner?
No, that's good for me.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Schuler.
Well, I was thinking, getting back to a comment that Ryan made, this just seems like it should come back as a preliminary plat and not simple conditions made tonight that would translate into a final plat. So getting another look at an updated preliminary plat would, in my mind, be the way to go.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, I'm going to take some liberties here. I'm going to take the blame on this because I asked the director to get a plat. We need to get this done. We, as a city, have purchased a lot of property, and to speak to Mr. Johnson's point, those properties aren't earning anything. The taxpayers have invested, but they're not getting a return. We need to get that land developed, and it's not just this parcel, there's other parcels too, but I probably pushed a little too hard to get this rolling, because right now it's not earning anything. It's a great location, and I know the weight that the director puts on our comprehensive plan and our future land use plan, and we do have future land use plans for parcels outside the city because the city grows. Townships, like it or not, were created for municipalities to grow. So it's the natural progression of things, and the cost of everything goes up every year. So if we keep the tax base the same, that means everybody's taxes in the city go up every year. If Town of Hull doesn't have development, your taxes are going to go up every year. Okay? But by creating these new residential units, commercial units, whatever it happens to be, we now have a little bit more flexibility to absorb some of those additional costs. Talking about some senior citizens, and I didn't even realize that you were one of those. I'm sorry. There are people that are getting taxed out of their home because the cost of everything goes up. So growth is pretty important, especially when the state says you can only increase your spending by the amount of net new construction. So if you don't grow, much like a shark, you will die. We can't afford to keep it up. So we have to grow. But we're not going to grow for growth's sake. This is a great location. And our comprehensive plan and our future land use plan show it as residential. If anybody has delusions of it being anything different, you're probably wrong. This will be residential, but how will it look? It's a great neighborhood, and contrary to what some people say, it's walkable and bikeable. You've got Aldi's, you've got Fleet Farm, you've got all of the new development out by Big Lots and that area. So it is a little walkable and bikeable. It's got a great school nearby, location, location, location. And clearly, it has neighbors who look after each other. Who wouldn't want to live here? But I think we've got some room to move things around a little bit. Maybe I live in the ghetto. My lot is 50 feet by 100 feet, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But that may not be what you like. That may not be what she likes or he likes. Housing means something different to everyone, and we're trying to meet those needs. So I think that by sending this back, redoing the subdivision plat a little bit, taking into consideration the concern for some bigger lots, maybe some green space, maybe some infrastructure, and that's a tough one too, because honestly, if you do something like Whitetail subdivision, I don't know if you know where that is out off of Torrin, that can get really expensive. When I'm going to buy a lot and I got to recoup $30,000 or whatever it is, I mean, the county can go spend $30,000 an acre. That's no big deal. But as a homeowner or a potential homeowner, $30,000 plus a $15,000 or $20,000 special assessment for utilities, that makes it awful tough. And when Dan was talking about $400,000 to build a 2,000 square foot home, well, throw another 50 grand on there just to buy the lot. That's tough. So we're trying to balance that. I also don't envy the director or any city planners because nobody's going to be completely happy. But know that this will likely be residential. And if we can work within the boundaries that you provided, that other people have provided, that people have provided feedback with the public information meeting, we're going to do that to the best of our ability, but you're probably not going to get everything you want. So just be aware of that. The motion is to refer back to staff. I made plenty of notes so we understand what our focus is from the commissioners and from the public. Public comments are still being accepted. If for some reason you couldn't make it to the meeting tonight, you couldn't because of technology testify, submit those comments in writing to Director Karnowski's office, Community Development, or you can get them to the city clerk, or honestly any city office will get them there. And we will be taking that public input till the next meeting. So with that, and I'm going to ask, we indulged you with some comments. I'd ask you to stick around after this because I'm going to deviate just a little bit and I need your help. So please stick around. Motion is to refer back to staff looking into those things. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? And that is approved. Now, please indulge me because you did such a great job with your applause. I got too short a notice to actually get this on the agenda, but Commissioner Dave Cooper, who's sitting two people to my right, gave me a little notice that his term is up in April, end of April, and he does not want to be reappointed. He's got life that gets in the way. But he served on the Plan Commission for 12 years. It's not an easy job, and there's no compensation. This is not a paid position. With family, it's difficult, especially when you're going to be here till 8:30, 9 o'clock on a meeting. So I'd like to present this to Commissioner Cooper for his service from February 2012 to April of 2024. In recognition of your dedicated public service as a city plan commissioner, the people of the city of Stevens Point extend their profound appreciation and sincere gratitude to you, Dave Cooper. Now applause. We did vote, right? All right.
Lisa?
Yes.
Quick question. Are you accepting any questions, and I'm looking for an answer, that's relevant but not on that plaque?
Director of my office.
Yeah, contact the director's office.
Oh, so not tonight.
Not tonight. We're done with that agenda item now. If anybody needs to take a minute, you can certainly leave, but we've got two more very important agenda items coming up. I know you're all, at least Jim's sitting at the edge of his seat. If you'd like to leave, I'll allow a few minutes so you can head out with minimal disruption here. Thank you all very much for coming.
I don't, Jim.
I don't remember.
Kneebone. Alder Kneebone.
Yeah, you're right.
It was,
Okay. It's all recorded. We'll have it online.
I seconded,
Yep.
yeah,
So Beacom and Kneebone.
yeah.
Like a public information meeting? We should do a public information meeting. We did in February. Yeah, I don't know. There were 50 people there.
Diane was there.
You were there?
Diane was there.
Oh, shit. Diane was there. Yeah.
How's, you guys making headway on having that stuff?
It is. It really felt like it's like bird magic, bird playing for Indiana State with nobody.
Sure. Yeah, send them to me and I'll make sure they get in the agenda pack.
There are some good, some
I don't think I got your letter.
Forgot about license fees.
Here, so, yeah, and if whatever you send to me, I'll make sure. Yeah, the map didn't really.
I'm with
turn
you.
out.
I get a conservation patrons every year, and I don't do half of it, but I know what it goes for.
history, I'm sure.
No,
Okay,
I'm
sounds
not
good.
going to do that anymore. I went to some of the hearings, and call me sometime. We'll chat about my experience
That wasn't
in our
OT, was it?
spring hearings.
Okay.
I'd rather let you do it. All right, everybody who needs to leave is leaving.
How are you doing?
We really got to finish the business. Thanks for staying.
I don't think that was the final.
All right, item number 6 is a request from the City of Stevens Point to dedicate an unaddressed parcel bounded by Maria Drive for the purpose of right-of-way. Get back to here, there we go. Director.
Fairly straightforward request before you this evening. There's a certified survey map included on page, I believe, 45 in your agenda packet, cut off at the bottom, because I'm not good at technology either. There's about, it's a 60 by 102-foot parcel of land that'll be dedicated as right-of-way. This is part of the city's overall map efforts, and so we do try to identify areas where we want roads to go through. So this is an area in which 3rd Street could
Sorry,
extend.
you got to open
through.
that door. Yeah, that's all right, thank you.
And so, pretty much the request before you is to accept the resolution and send this to council so we can dedicate that as right-of-way.
Okay, commissioners, a motion or questions?
Move approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. Second, we'll give the second to Kneebone.
Doesn't matter.
We're going to give the second to Kneebone. Discussion? Comments from the audience or online? Just in case, look at that, a chat popped in. Trevor, let me find you again, unmute. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Don't close the door, ma'am. Don't close the door. Law says we got to keep it open. All right, go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, thanks. Just want to say, conversely, Trevor Rourke, 601 Washington. Conversely, I'm supportive of this project because of the potential for infill, and it basically helps complete the grid system within our inner neighborhoods. So I think this is a good step forward. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 7 is the director's report. Director, report.
My report is short and sweet, and then I have nothing to report to this body this month. I know it's been a long night, so I'll forgive, or we'll move on from there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for attending, and we are adjourned at 8:39.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.